Chapter 46. Skill Giant's Armor Level 1. Active skill. Mana required is 10. Covers the whole body with magical armor, and the user becomes gigantic. Reduces mana by 1 per second while casting. The skill Giant's Armor obtained after defeating Kwak Du Young drained mana in real time as soon as casted. For reference, Suho's current maximum mana power was 635. In other words, the time the skill can be maintained is 635 seconds. Thus, its usage was only limited to 10 minutes, assuming he doesn't use any other skills. Even though Suho's strength, size, and defense improved a lot, there were still other issues. He could not hold a weapon because his hand had grown so much. In the end, Suho gave up his main weapon, the twin swords, and had no choice but to fight with his bare hands. Ruler's Power. When Suho raised his fist, the ruler's power overlapped on top of it, and black energy enveloped him. He plunged his fist into the sand centipede that was wrapped around his body. The sand centipede shook its long body and backed away from the tremendous impact. However, it was not a fatal blow, so the monster survived and burrowed into the sand to escape. With that one shot, Suho's mana power was reduced in half, and so with the time to maintain the giant's armor skill. If I fight like this, even the potion won't be of help. Suho made a quick decision. Run away, uncast the giant's armor. The armor covering his whole body disappeared, and Suho's body became smaller. He immediately climbed on Arachne's back and reached out to Esil. What are you doing? Aren't you going to run away? Esil had a lot to say, but she quickly grabbed his hand. Arachne, carrying 2 people, began to run across the desert, vigorously, with its 8 legs. 7 sand centipedes followed closely behind them. The distance in between was so close. A breathless chase took place. We're going to get caught. Esil turned and glared at the centipedes following closely. Then, without hesitation, she threw her spear at the nearest centipede. The sand centipede wavered and dodged the attack. Thanks to that momentary hesitation, the distance definitely increased, but Esil's spear flew away instead. What about your weapon? It's fine, it will come back. Esil stretched out her hand and shouted. Her spear flew through the air like a boomerang and returned to her hand. She swung the spear around and confidently looked at Suho. This spear is my horn. It comes back to me wherever I am. Horn? It's a demon's horn. Some demons use their horns as weapons. The same goes for our Ragnarok clan. We're good then. What? Esil shuddered. Suho looked at her, and his eyes flashed. I'll create the gap this time, so match my attacks well. Suho smiled and pulled out his twin swords. Used skill Blade Storm. The twin swords swung and created a sandstorm. His goal was to block the centipede's eyesights. It was successful, and the faces of the sand centipedes were covered in a thick layer of dust. Now, okay? Esil threw her spear infused with magic at them. Her spear flew through the sandstorm and caused an explosion in the centipede's body. The centipede hit by the attack was startled and shook its long body and hid again in the sand. You keep hiding when you're at a disadvantage. The spear returned to Esil's hand as she clenched her fist in anger. Young master. Beru appeared in front of Suho. Please run away over there. Suho turned his gaze to the direction Beru pointed. Right there. Pyramid? Suho's eyes widened. He didn't know it because they were being chased by the sand centipede, but a huge pyramid actually existed from a distance like a picture. Suho muttered in disbelief. Don't tell me, is it Earth? To be exact, it seems to be a field that exists on Earth. He never thought the gate would be connected to Earth. This was a really unexpected situation. Looking now, he could see a faint blue mist mixed with the sandstorm. There seems to be something strange about it. But just like how entering a gate from Earth leads to a dungeon, it could be that this one leads to Earth since they moved through the gate from the Shadow Dungeon. Without hesitation, Suho turned Arachne toward the pyramid. They managed to approach the pyramid, squabbling with the sand centipede. Huh? Surprisingly, the chase with the centipede suddenly stopped. They're not following us anymore. We've survived. Esil cheered with joy. Beru stood tall on top of Esil's head with an arrogant look on his face. On the other hand, Suho tilted his head as he carefully watched the centipede's movements. They couldn't come near the pyramid and were just moving around. Are they afraid of the pyramid? Why? When he turned his gaze back to the pyramid, there was surprisingly a small village formed around it. It looks like the real Earth? A strangeness appeared in Suho's eyes. At first glance, the appearance of the village was quite modern. Modern signboards were attached to the old historic buildings. Who are you? Just in time, the guards of the village's borders asked Suho as he approached the village. How did you get here? Did you come across that red desert? What are they saying? Suho had a puzzled look on his face. Language barrier. Arabic words were pouring out of the mouths of the guards, who were Egyptians. They're asking how we got here avoiding the sand centipedes. Surprisingly, Esil understood Arabic and translated. Demons can understand and communicate with human thoughts, not human language. Come to think of it, it was strange that Esil, a demon, spoke Korean in the first place. Anyway, this is more convenient. Suho came down from Arachne with Esil and talked to the guards. Rather than a conversation, it was mainly in a question and answer format to pass through the gateway. Are you hunters? Yes. What is the purpose of your visit here? Nothing. Got here by chance after being chased by centipedes. Then how long will you stay? Food is scarce here. We'll just take a short break and return soon. Suho, who had been answering each of the guards' words through Esil's interpretation, glanced at them and read their mood. Looks like they're interested in Arachne. Arachne was a huge spider that looked menacing. Surprisingly, their gaze toward Arachne was quite favorable. Which one of you is the summoner of this spider? Is this spider a transport pet? It's amazing that you thought of riding a spider across the Red Desert. Can you let other people ride on your spider? Other hunters usually come here by helicopter. A helicopter? Suho looked around with a puzzled expression. What was running into the minds of those who dare to ride a helicopter to this dangerous land surrounded by giant centipedes? For what reason? Suho looked around again. All he could see was sand and only one pyramid. Is it because of the pyramid? In response to Suho's question, the guards instead looked at Suho and Esil with curious expressions. You guys really didn't know anything. They felt like a fool. The desert city of Kamura. This small town was originally a tourist spot that made a living for the community, with tourists who came to see the pyramid. But a month ago, Kamura's hell began, when the entire desert in this area became a field dungeon. Numerous tourists and residents in the city turned into mistburns and started attacking people. While those awakened as hunters fought against them, there were many deaths. Those who barely survived began to escape the field via helicopter. Because of the giant centipedes roaming around the village, the only means of transportation was a helicopter. But then something strange happened. Using helicopters, outside hunters began to gather in the village one by one. They had one goal: pyramid. For some reason, the hunters began to thoroughly explore the pyramids as soon as they arrived in the city. They had a reason. It's because a shaman made a strange prophecy a month ago. A prophecy? Suho tilted his head at Esil's translation of the guard's words. Esil told the contents of the prophecy with a somewhat awkward expression. Sooner or later the life-born of death will awaken from its seal. Oh? Baru's eyes flashed with interest at the prophecy. And its power will raise the dead. Suho and Baru looked at each other at the same time. That prophecy was very absurd and abstract, but it sounded too intuitive to them. Young master, I guess that prophecy. Was it pertaining to me? A life born of death? Doesn't that sound like an explicit reference to Suho, the son of Sung Jinwoo, the Shadow Monarch? Even the recent removal of the Seal of Protection, or summoning the dead, isn't it pertaining to the Shadow Fragment skill? However, it seemed that the prophecy had been interpreted in a completely different way by other people. Esil continued, and of course, when that prophecy came out, a dungeon break occurred inside the pyramid. What a timing. In fact, words like life born from death were expressions that could be found in any myth of any country. Even in Egypt, pyramids and pharaohs, the hobby of many rulers in history has always been immortality. However, the Egyptian pharaohs went one step further from immortality, and even built a huge pyramid with countless slaves, desiring even the world after death. Because the timing was so precise, hunters flocked from all over to say that the prophecy seemed to be pointing here. Suho finally understood the situation and nodded. The existence of the pyramid has been a building that has been embracing mysteries for a long time. However, if people who did not know the power of the Shadow Monarch listened to the shaman's prophecy, it could have been interpreted as a skill that gave eternal life, such as resurrection of life. Runestones, which are sometimes found in dungeons, brought out a variety of skills. But unexpectedly something important was found inside. What? For a moment, Esil stared blankly at the guard who was talking to her. Then the guard looked awkward for no reason and shrugged. It's not difficult to let you know, but they say there's a condition instead. Condition? It was at that time when Suho was going to ask what the condition was, but Esil had already grabbed the guard by the collar and lifted him up. How dare you make a deal with me? After a long absence, Esil returned as a lofty demon noble and glared fiercely at the guard. Seeing those eyes, the guard's complexion turned white, and he stammered out an answer. The hunters finally found a hieroglyphic phrase deep inside the pyramid. Writings? What does it say? Let there be light in the future of the challenger. It was something that had never existed in Egyptian history. Chapter 47. Let there be light in the future of the challenger. Great Spellcaster Kandiaru. That was the phrase found by hunters. It was a record that had never been found in Egyptian history. Hunters were understandably outraged by the historic discovery. The number of people who risked visiting this small city of Kamaru increased. But Baru, who was silently listening to Esil's words, made a strange expression. Kandiaru? Why? Suho looked at Baru. It's a known name. Baru rubbed his chin with a genuinely interested expression. Great Spellcaster Kandiaru. He is the architect who designed the level-up system. Architect? Why would someone like that leave a writing inside the pyramid? I don't know that much, but isn't that building considerably older? That's right. Kandiaru was a shaman of the Huan tribe who dreamed of eternal life. Great Spellcaster Kandiaru? He was originally a shaman who aimed for transcendence and eternal life, and in the end, to achieve that purpose, he signed a contract with the rulers and designed a level-up system. The existence completed with that system was Suho's father, Sung Jinwoo, the Shadow Monarch. So what is he up to now? His whereabouts are unknown after the War of the Outer Gods. Whether he really got eternal life or he died. Baru stared at the pyramid in the distance with a meaningful look. Perhaps there may be traces of Kandiaru in that pyramid. Suho nodded. The content of the urgent quest is to remove the cause of the dimensional rift. If it was Kandiaru who created the level-up system, it wouldn't be difficult for him to create a dimensional rift. It felt like puzzle pieces were fitting in Suho's head. He turned his gaze to the pyramid. Let's go right in. Hey, wait! As Suho and Esil tried to move toward the pyramid, the guards urgently called them. With the two glaring piercingly, the guards stopped with awkward expressions. I heard you have to be careful if you're going to enter the pyramid right now. Why? After that, Suho looked at Esil as the conversation continued for a long time, and Esil quickly translated. To summarize, there is a guild that recently monopolized the pyramid by force. Guild? Suho looked confused. Scavenger Guild. It was one of the largest guilds in the United States, founded by Thomas Andre, an S-class hunter. He was a UFC unlimited weight champion even before his awakening, and was unrivaled in the ring. He defended his title until his retirement, after which, he suddenly awakened as an S-class hunter, and now he has become one of the strongest hunters in the United States with no rivals outside the ring. As a guild established by such a person, the reputation of the Scavenger Guild was unmatched in the United States. Their symbol was strength. Under the guild leader's theory that those with power win everything, they had a lot of notoriety. It was also a guild responsible for the safety of citizens by defeating so many demons. Still, I don't think all the Scavenger Guild members came. The numbers are quite few. Esil, the walking translator, conveyed the words of the guards. It was only natural that the guards were concerned about Suho and Esil. Entering the pyramid monopolized by the Scavenger Guild meant that they would confront those people soon. However, Suho must go on a quest and had no other options. Despite the guards' dissuade, Suho and Esil entered the village. They walked straight toward the pyramid. Meanwhile, Arachne hid in Suho's shadows after the hard work it did. That was the only way it could be free from the villagers' gazes. The village's atmosphere. Suho crossed the street and looked around. Hunters with big and small energy were living throughout that place. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary village. But their energy was enough to let Suho feel that all their nerves were focused on the pyramid. It was like they had the momentum to run towards the pyramid at any moment. But why can't they do that? It's them. Men with tough stance stood guard at the entrance to the pyramid. The Scavenger Guild's B-class hunter Gerald was the head of the gatekeepers guarding the entrance. He had been in a bad mood ever since he had been brought there a few days ago. Did they bring people all the way to Egypt because of some kind of prophecy or superstition? What's more is making him simply guard at the door under the scorching sun. Gerald's already formidable face was further crumpled by the hot sunlight. Who are those guys? Seeing a man and woman slowly approaching the pyramid, he frowned even more. Gerald asked the subordinate next to him. Huh? Didn't you notify all the hunters in the village? I did. Approaching the pyramid will be regarded as hostile to the Scavenger Guild members. Then what kind of shitheads are those guys? Do they think they have multiple lives? There was a reason Gerald was intentionally talking loud to his subordinates. Most hunters have good hearing. This was a kind of warning or a threat to kill if Suho and Esil would continue to approach. His words reached Suho's ears. Of course, he couldn't understand the meaning because it was English. Esil didn't even think of interpreting those words. Are they still coming up? Suho and Esil were going up the stairs of the pyramid one step at a time, and when they got closer, hey! As Gerald winked at his subordinates, the Scavenger Guild members rushed at Suho without any warning. Get out of here, you bastards! Huh? Looking at them, Suho tilted his head. This is how they attack? Well, we couldn't understand each other anyway. Suho smiled brightly and drew out his twin swords. Sometimes fists are a more effective way to communicate than 100 words. Bladestorm. Use skill Bladestorm. There was a sudden sandstorm. As a result, the members of the Scavenger Guild who had already stepped on the outer wall of the inclined pyramid stumbled down. Meanwhile, a fierce battle was taking place inside the pyramid. Because of the disintegration, the pyramid inside turned into a labyrinth. There were other hunters who were exploring the labyrinth even before the Scavenger Guild arrived. The latter were very coercive dealing with other hunters. You guys have two options, go out or die. Crazy bastards, we came here first. The hunters whom the Scavenger Guild confronted were enraged. Xing, a B-class hunter from the Asura Guild in India, had been exploring the labyrinth for a week. However, the guys who came in later are trying to kick them out by force. There was no hunter who would quietly withdraw from a situation like that. Everyone get ready for battle. The Asura Guild, like its name, was by no means easygoing. All of them had twin swords, and the red swords coming out of each of their weapons was like that of Asura in mythology. As soon as they were ready to fight, a terrible killing spree engulfed the area. The Scavenger Guild, who looked down on them because of their small number, became more serious. Xing raised his twin swords and aimed at them. I can't come this far and go back empty-handed. You better not take us too lightly. Xing was a rising star in the Asura Guild, but due to the nature of India, a class society, one could never rise to the top without a clear criminal record. In particular, this incident was of utmost interest within the Asura Guild. Xing volunteered for this job to enhance his status. If I go back empty-handed, I'll be kicked out of the guild. What's with these guys? Randolph, who was leading the Scavenger Guild members, was a little taken aback by the response of the Asura Guild. Unlike the other hunters, they did not intend to back down. Sigh. These are the ones who have to see blood. Randolph's lips curled up into a wicked smile. A murderer who committed a crime that took place in a dungeon cannot be held guilty. Kill them all. At that moment, the whole body of the Scavenger Guild members was wrapped in giant's armor. If the Asura Guild's avant-garde consisted of dealers, the Scavenger Guild's avant-garde consisted of tankers. It didn't feel good. For a moment, Xing felt an instinctive sense of danger. The well-organized tanker's sense of intimidation reminded him of a huge monster, a battle between spear and shield. However, in such a narrow space where it was difficult to wield a weapon, the shield was overwhelmingly advantageous. Knock them all down. The Scavenger Guild members rushed forward with their excellent defense. Make space. At Xing's command, the Asura Guild members mercilessly swung their twin swords and broke down the wall that was blocking them. A space was created. Attack everyone! The spear and the shield... No, swords and shields clashed. Randolph crushed his opponent with overwhelming force. He was a little taken aback as the opponent struggled quite a bit, but the result didn't change anyway. Your petite blades will never pierce our armor. In the end, what determines the outcome of the fight is overwhelming power. All the guild members that Randolph had brought were proud of their strength. The Asura Guild members were thrown helplessly by the brutal force. Cut the seams of their armor! Xing's plan worked. No matter how hard the tanks were, they were not invincible. And there were definitely gaps that their armor couldn't protect. However, the Scavenger Guild themselves knew better. They tried to press the opponent while filling the gap with each other. Feel free to come at me. Randolph shouted and ran like a truck, throwing Rio's body off. Xing flew backwards and crashed into a wall. Blood gushed out of his mouth. Is this the end? Right then. The sound of a wall collapsing could be heard in the distance. A man and woman quietly intervened in the fierce battle. Huh? Suho, who reached this point by destroying the walls of the labyrinth, met Xing's eyes. Then he looked away, and this time his eyes met Randolph's. Suho silently nodded and turned around. Well, keep going. Chapter 48. Where are you going? Randolph wouldn't just leave him who was about to sneak past them. He had his men chase after Suho with a loud voice. The Scavenger Guild members rushed towards Suho like rhinos. How dare they? Twin wicks flashed in Baru's eyes. Meanwhile, Suho looked at them calmly as they rushed towards him. Are they really just tanks? The ones guarding the entrance were all tanks, so Suho thought it just happened to be that case. But it seemed like they were really all tanks. In general, raiders are composed of an appropriate number of dealers, tanks, and healers in a well-balanced manner, although it was not always that significant. For instance, if the tank had the attack power to replace the role of the dealer as it is now, there would be no particular problem. However, if the balance was broken, there was bound to be a disadvantage. Arise! A giant shadow spider rose from Suho's shadow. In accordance with Suho's will, it began to move. Black spider webs were scattered throughout the narrow labyrinth. What's this? The bodies of the Scavenger Guild members who were running vigorously were stuck in the spider web, and they slowed down. Suho and Esil moved. Summoning hunter? A guy with some tricks? Randolph sneered and put his entire energy into his whole body. It was only natural that he laughed at Suho since the Scavenger Guild is known for their strength. Summoning hunters are the ones who just obsequiously hide behind their summoned beasts and follow them. The guild members' confidence was enough to make them ignore the summoned beast and kill the hunter behind it instead. The spider's web was ripped out by their overwhelming power. However, Arachne's web is a type of skill made of magic. It can be spewed as much as the monster would want, and that web had a very annoying quality attached to it. Arachne uses skill puppet show. What? One of the guild members who ran in the lead, tearing off the spider's web, swung his forearm and knocked down a colleague next to him. Fuck. Hey, are you crazy? The one who had been hit by the fist and had a nosebleed shouted. However, his leg suddenly bent at a strange angle. What? He tripped over another colleague passing by. What are you doing? The Scavenger Guild members fell and rolled on the floor. Randolph's face flushed red in that truly messy situation. What the hell is happening? He stamped his feet and the floor cracked as if there was an earthquake. He'd rather get tricked by overwhelming force than be tricked by such skills like that. Stand up. Catch that bastard right now. Yes. The guild members got back to their senses at Randolph's loud voice. They cautiously surrounded Suho. I guess you forgot me? Esil rushed towards them with her spear. It was not easy to dodge the javelin flying in a straight line in that narrow space. Esil's weapon caused an explosion of magic. Even though they managed to avoid the attack, the wall behind them exploded and collapsed on the other guild members. The spear returned to Esil's hand before she knew it, and she threw the spear again towards them. In the meantime, Suho, I'm after their leader. Randolph's eyebrows twitched as he watched Suho rush towards him. Ha! You dare to go after me? Did I look that easy to you? Randolph smirked and looked at Suho, who was charging at him. Randolph's attack, imbued with extreme magical power, aimed at Suho. Right then. Ruler's power. Suho stepped on the air and jumped up and went back behind Randolph as if he were performing aerial acrobatics. Huh? Well then, we'll pass by. Suho chuckles at Randolph and raises his hand with a grin. The smile enraged Randolph. How dare this bastard? He's the type that easily gets provoked. In an instant, a strange light appeared in Suho's eyes. Through his senses stats, he figured out that Randolph was an A-class hunter, a level of strength he cannot dare to face with his own. However, if he had a simple ignorant personality like he appeared, there would be infinite ways to deal with him. First, teasing. With the ruler's power, Suho lifted a brick that had fallen near him. He hit the back of Randolph's head. What a brat. There was no way Randolph would be damaged by a brick that just slightly touched the back of his head. But the effect was very good. I will kill that bastard myself. He ignored his subordinates and rushed towards Suho. Even with that terrifying aura, Suho only grinned. Now, Arachne uses skill puppet show. At that moment, boom! The ceiling exploded above their heads. Then through the gaping hole a giant centipede appeared. What? Everyone inside was horrified. Poisoned-Tooth Sand Centipede. The grotesque and repulsive colossal monster that should have been in the Red Desert suddenly invaded the place. Why's that here? How did it come close this way? Everyone's eyes turned to Suho. Coincidentally, he is a summoning hunter. Most of all, he was the one who was able to summon the spider-like monster. No way. However, it was not the time to worry about that. Run away! The hunters were startled and scattered at the scream of the sand centipede, which tried to enter the labyrinth. Esil went to Suho and asked, Suho, did you do it? What are you doing? Aren't you running away? Meanwhile, the village is in an uproar. Sand centipedes suddenly attacked the village. These things got crazy all of a sudden. The time has come at last. Sand centipedes, who had only been wandering around the village so far, invaded the village. But the attention of those who they thought would attack the hunters in the village was focused only on the pyramids. The centipedes are flocking to the pyramids. Get out of the way. We are not their purpose. The hunters quickly stepped back and cleared the way for the centipedes. Those were not the kind of monsters they could deal with in the first place. The sand centipedes each clung to the pyramid and began to gnaw through the stone walls to get into it. What the hell is going on? The hunters couldn't keep their mouths shut at that bizarre sight. There really must be something in there. No, more than that. The hunters in there must all be dead. Hunters who couldn't even get into the pyramid because of the Scavenger Guild anyway were even pleased. They decided to watch it all for now. After the situation is over and all the Scavenger Guild members die, they would enter the pyramid afterwards. Kamura Hunter's eyes lit. The sudden intrusion of sand centipedes made the situation a lot messier. Suho and Esil retreated in the opposite direction from the Scavenger Guild. They met other people eventually. Asura Guild. They met Xing, who then asked Suho, My name is Xing of the Asura Guild. Which guild do you belong to? What did he say? Suho's eyes looked at his interpreter, Esil. Esil sighed and answered Ryoshing instead. Independent. We are from Korea. Korea? I see. Now that the situation is like this, would you like to team up for a while? Ryoshing tried to read Suho's mood with a sharp gaze. He didn't reveal his affiliation, but I'm sure he's from a promising guild. Ryoshing watched all of Suho's moves against Randolph. His quick judgment and fighting sense were never below him. Suho had no reason to reject Ryoshing's offer. Since the sand centipede had appeared, it wasn't a situation where humans would grapple with each other. Well, let's do it. Seeing Suho nod, Ryoshing let out a sigh of relief. Great, I had a lot of questions. Suho talked to Esil. What happened here? Ryoshing continued to move away from the sand centipede and answered Suho. This pyramid wants us to prove ourselves. Qualification? Suho and Beru's eyes lit up at the same time at the word they had heard many times. Watching Suho's expression, Ryoshing was impressed deep inside. It was natural to worry about your life first when you were told to prove your qualifications in a dungeon like that. A cataclysm suddenly occurred 2 years ago. Since then, numerous scientists have questioned the said phenomenon, but no one has yet been able to uncover the mystery behind it. Fear of the unknown. However, Suho's reaction was different from what was common. Smiling, this young man is genuinely enjoying this difficulty. He was born with the natural disposition of Asura. That's what Ryoshing thought. Is this right? It seems to be right. What they remembered was the king's trial at Magok Field. The test to prove the king's qualifications was taking place right there as well. If this is a test, there was only one way to prove oneself: go deep within. The problem was the hunters blocking their way. In the end, I'll have to deal with the Scavenger Guild members first before I can move forward. Suho stared intently at the corner where the guild members ran away from the sand centipede. Perhaps that is the deepest part of the labyrinth. They would still be exploring there to prove their qualifications. Suho, what are you thinking? Esil asked Suho. Do you think it will be difficult for us to deal with all of them alone? Yeah, Suho agreed. It seemed that it would be difficult with Arachne alone on their side. I think we'll have a chance to win if we have more soldiers. But those soldiers had to be at least of Arachne's level, or higher. Ah, right. Just in time, Suho's eyes twinkled as he heard the sand centipede's scream coming from afar. Maybe it was different in an open desert, but wouldn't it be possible to deal with them one by one in that isolated space? Chapter 49. Are you perhaps going to hunt that centipede? Ryoshing's eyes widened. Suho suddenly heard the scream of a sand centipede and smacked his lips. Anyone could feel the spirit of the hunter looking for prey from his expression. Suho, are you really going? I think it would be possible if it was inside this place. That was how the conversation between Esil and Suho went. Suho has already made up his mind. Wait a minute. Dealing with centipedes is more dangerous than fighting the Scavenger Guild? Ryoshing urgently stopped Suho. Hunter's death always comes from brazenness. He had seen a lot of hunters who have excellent qualities like Suho, who died in vain while showing off. How about this? After a few hours of rest, our healers will recover their mana. After which, join forces with us to deal with the Scavenger Guild. I don't have time for that. Suho firmly rejected his offer. He looked up at the ceiling where debris was falling. We don't know when the pyramid will suddenly collapse. Suho suggested something to the Asura Guild. You'd better escape now. Leave this place to me. That can't be. I can't go back empty-handed. Ryoshing followed Suho and got up. He stumbled. The shock from Randolph earlier still had an effect on him. Seeing that, Beru clicked his tongue. You are a weak worm. How could you kill a hunter? Ryoshing's face flashed red. He couldn't understand Beru's words, but he could feel the meaning behind his gaze as if Beru was staring at something insignificant. To receive such stares from mere summoned beasts was a humiliation for him, who had been highly looked up to as a promising hunter. You guys just stay here and rest. We'll go first. I'm ashamed. Ryoshing finally sat down on the floor and took a deep sigh. He was stubborn, but eventually gave in. Not only himself, but all of the Asura Guild members were currently injured and were unable to move. Recalling Randolph, the culprit behind this incident, Ryo gritted his teeth. Let's see, this revenge must be... He looked at Suho, burning with vengeance. Can I ask you one favor? What? If you run into a Scavenger Guild member on the way, can you give him a shot? 2 would be possible. That's good. Ryoshing put on a satisfied expression at Suho's answer. Then he took out a ring from his pocket. I'll give you this. A strange light appeared in Suho's eyes as he accepted it. Item: Ring of Horus. Difficulty to obtain. Grade B. Type: Accessories. Intellect stat +10. Effect: Wisdom of Horus. Increases mana recovery speed by 30%. It's an artifact I got while moving around this labyrinth. I don't know if it'll be useful. Xing wasn't able to check the information on the item and didn't seem to know how great the item he was handing over was. This item is exactly what I need right now. While fighting the sand centipedes, Suho desperately felt what he lacked. Mana. Suho was able to gain strong power as a result of allocating all remaining stats into his strength stats. But as the importance of other skills has increased, he felt the need for intellect stats. The Ring of Horus was a great treasure that increased his intellect stat by a whopping 10. Besides, as the intellect stat goes up, the number of shadow soldiers also increases. In order to catch the sand centipede, increased offensive power was the answer. The opponents were hard to defeat just by simply increasing the number of shadow soldiers. But with the Ring of Horus, the odds would go up even more. Thanks, I will use it well. Suho hurriedly took the ring from Xing's hand before he changed his mind. Status window! He immediately checked the status window. Status window. Name, Sung Suho. Level 26. Occupation, none. Title, Wolf Slayer. HP, 6350. MP, 1235. Stats, Body Strength, 54. Muscle Strength, 35. Agility, 35. Intellect, 35. Senses, 35, plus 5. Divisive ability points, 0. Whoa. Suho's eyes widened. His mana power, which was 635, had risen to 235. That was at least twice as much. This would double the casting time of the giant's armor. Moreover, number of shadows that can be released, 1 to 20. I think it's really worth a try now. Suho flashed a smile on his lips and immediately turned his gaze to the place where he felt the presence of a sand centipede. Let's go right away. I can feel the presence of other demons on the way. Beru guided Suho by flicking his short antennae. From the point of view of having to increase the number of soldiers anyway, the more mage beasts they encountered on the way, the better. Suho parted ways with the Asura Guild and moved into the labyrinth. Meanwhile, the Scavenger Guild members, who jumped into the depths of the labyrinth to avoid the sand centipede, were struggling. Stop! Mummies are rising from the coffins again. The demonic beasts that appeared were in the shape of mummies. At first, the guild members took the situation lightly as the mummies slowly approached. However, when they actually bumped into them, those mummies were by no means easy ones. Randolph, no matter how many times I kill these guys, they rise again. Break their limbs so that they will never rise again. Yeah, but... Randolph was startled. One by one, his subordinates dealing with the mummies turned white and began to collapse. Poison! As he hit the mummy's body, rotten poison seeped out from within the bandage. What happened? Randolph has experienced various monsters while working in Scavenger Guild, but this kind of monster was the first one. A monster that resurrects endlessly. These guys usually have a summoner behind them, right? Randolph had been looking for the summoner since a while ago, but he couldn't find even a trace of him. Look for him. We have to find the summoner somehow. If he controls these guys, he must be hiding somewhere around here. Randolph was desperate. Right behind them, they could hear the sound of sand centipedes approaching close, and in front of them, mummies were surrounding them. Healer, you still haven't recovered your mana? I'm sorry, if you wait a little longer... Useless. Seeing Randolph indignantly kicking the mummy in the stomach, the healers were horrified. Fretting won't refill their exhausted mana quickly. This won't work. Ignore everything and rush forward unconditionally. Randolph, what about the poison? Just stop breathing and run, you bastards. The bodies of the mummies bounced like bowling pins at Randolph's unstoppable charge. There is no time to waste on these little puppies. Run, no matter what. Besides, those mummies would be eaten by the sand centipedes that followed. It would be perfect if the mummy's poison killed the sand centipede as well. Scavenger Guild members started running with their teeth clenched to escape from the mummies surrounding them. Rotten mummy. Rotten mummy. Suho and Esil, who jumped into the labyrinth, were also surrounded by countless mummies. Esil immediately figured out the problem while attacking the mummies with her spear. Suho, they have no weaknesses. No matter how many times I kill them, they won't die. Because they are already dead bodies in the first place. Beru, who was floating in the air watching the battle, smirked leisurely. On top of that, they even excrete poison. That's because they are rotten corpses. Beru explaining so casually looked so mean. He was flying back and forth among the mummies with an expression of great interest. Young master, these guys are not normal monsters. Then what? They are artificially created by someone with witchcraft. Incantation? There was a name that came to his mind at the word witchcraft. The Great Spellcaster Kandiaru. There are not many people who can create monsters of this level. A soldier that doesn't die even after getting killed. Doesn't it look like he imitated the shadow soldiers? Baru scratched his chin, remembering the architect who created the level-up system. Kandiaru was a great spellcaster who dreamed of immortality. Perhaps this was his laboratory. However, it failed in the end, and it seems that he had unfinished business. Suho nodded at Baru's words and looked at the mummies. Shadow release is possible on this target. Shadow release is possible on this target. Shadow release is possible on this target. Those messages appeared as soon as Suho got close. The mummies existed as dead after all. Moreover, the power of the Shadow Monarch was to rule over the dead by controlling death. Suho smiled and reached out his hand toward the mummies flocking towards him. Arise! A black shadow began to move beneath the feet of the mummies who were walking. The shadows wrapped around their white bandage and dyed it black. Shadow release succeeded. Shadow release succeeded. Shadow release succeeded. The mummies were now wrapped in black bandages. A new name tag was engraved on their head. Shadow Mummy Level 1. General Class. Whoa! Seeing the scene, Esil's face instantly showed a dejected expression. All of the battles she had fought so hard for up until now had become futile. Compatibility. Regardless of anything, everything was a matter of compatibility. Arise. Suho stretched out his hand as he slowly walked among the mummies that continued to attack him. Shadow release succeeded. Arise. Shadow release succeeded. The mummies clad in black bandages began screaming in awe at Suho, who had given them a new life. As their number increased, their screams became like the hymns of a magnificent choir. Seeing that wonderful sight, Baru smiled sinisterly. A life born from death, I really like that prophecy. Chapter 50. The Scavenger Guild members were busy chasing after Randolph, who was ahead of them dealing with the mummies. Fortunately, they learned some tricks to deal with mummies while watching Randolph. Randolph mercilessly pulled the limbs of the mummies that stood in his way with tremendous strength. Don't just break their legs, pull them out. Don't let them walk again. Pull out their arms so they can't even crawl. Certainly that method worked. Where Randolph passed by like a storm, mummies with limbs removed were on the floor like insects. But even that didn't last long. Their body parts are being connected again. It was the bandages that kept the original shape of the mummies. Their bandages moved on their own, reattaching the fallen limbs and moving the bodies. Somehow, though, that bought them time. Keep running! The guild members ran with all their might, but the labyrinth was complicated. They got lost many times. Right then, the subordinates running behind Randolph found Suho approaching from afar. Isn't that the summoning hunter from earlier? Is that so? How dare he come in here? Although they were struggling, all the trouble was to find the relics hidden in the pyramid. Randolph couldn't let other hunters, other than Scavenger Guild, intervene with his important goal. Great, let's catch him, throw him as bait for the mummies, and let's go. They were about to move towards Suho, with an ominous look on their faces. Damn. Suddenly, black mummies appeared behind Suho. The guild members froze on the spot. Crazy. What are those again? Suho was dragging an army of black mummies behind him. Huh? Just in time, Suho also found them. The Scavenger Guild members felt a visceral fear and turned away. Shit, run! Seeing them start to run away without hesitation, Esil quickly threw her spear. The wall collapsed, blocking their retreat pathway. In the end, they turned their heads to Suho with a bitter look in their eyes. Whatever, we just need to kill that summoning hunter. Ignore the mummies and kill that bastard. However, their momentum did not last long. Even if the white mummies were regenerated, that wasn't fast enough. The black mummy's regeneration speed was absurdly fast. The effect of young master's mana power rising is evident. Baru was delighted and he cheered. Screams were heard everywhere, and a completely different scenario unfolded. Do not forget, young master, the fact that your true power is the immortal army. Suho's army overpowered them and continued to advance, but he was never overconfident. Class A Hunter Randolph. Suho hasn't been able to defeat anyone yet with this level of strength. I have to catch a Poisoned-Tooth Sand Centipede? Suho continued to move toward where the sand centipede's roar came from afar. The moment he was waiting for came sooner than expected. Above the heads of the Scavenger Guild members who were running away, the ceiling collapsed, revealing a sand centipede. Save me! The sand centipede swallowed a hunter whole in an instant, and turned its attention to another prey. The poison dripping from its teeth choked the hunter. Used skill Bladestorm. Suho hurriedly used Bladestorm to counter the acrid poison smog. Just by being near, his HP was decreasing in real time. They kindly visited me in person. Suho swung his twin swords. Everyone go! With that, 19 black mummies attacked the sand centipede at once. The sand centipede mercilessly bit and killed the black mummies. However, the black mummies continued to regenerate with the use of the bandages attaching the body parts, no matter how much they were torn off. And even more like a demon, the mummies rushed towards the sand centipede. The poison leaking out of the sand centipede's teeth seemed to do no damage at all to the poisonous black mummies. On the contrary, the poison of the black mummies couldn't be handled by the sand centipedes. In the end, the fierce battle of the demons biting each other continued. Arachne! Spread webs so it doesn't escape. At Suho's command, Arachne began to spew spiderwebs on the sand centipede's body. Esil! Keep checking so it doesn't tear the web. How? Whatever way you think of. Esil jumped forward. When she infused magic into her spear, it grew longer and longer. Oh, this was possible? Meanwhile, Suho quickly bought a mana potion from the store and put it in his mouth. Just then, Baru appeared and explained. Among the demons, there are those who can be spiritualized like that. That's why the demons in the factory can also possess humans. Do you remember? Spiritualization? Yes. That spear is the demon's horn. And if the demon can be spiritualized, that spear can also be spiritualized. If it gets transformed into a spiritual body, it will be easy to infuse magic to adjust its size. What about mine? Suho raised his weapon, the Vulcan's horn. After all, that sword was also a demon's horn? Oh, that's right. A strange light appeared in Baru's eyes. In my memory, the demon named Vulcan was enormously large. Of course, the horns were also very large. Why is this sword made of such a large horn so small? Its power must have been compressed in the process of making the weapon and transforming it into like Esil's spear. Suho's got an idea. Item: Horn of Vulcan. Difficulty to obtain, unknown. Type: sword. Attack +40. A sword crafted from the horns of the greedy demon Vulcan. Vulcan's powers are imbued, dealing more damage. Effect: Destruction Desire. Increases physical damage by 40%. Effect: Demon Devourer. The power of Vulcan becomes stronger as it devours a demon's soul. Devoured demon's soul 10. Item information floated on Vulcan's horn. That sword was a weapon that became stronger as it absorbed demon's soul. Esil, who was fighting fiercely right in front of him, was also a demon. A demon aristocrat with very noble blood. Esil. Why? Esil answered without turning her head. I have something on my mind right now. Can you help me? I don't know what it is, but I got it anyway. Is that a yes? Suho's lips went up at Esil's confirmation. Then, he approached right next to Esil, who was fighting a sand centipede. Can you become a spirit now? It is possible, but why? Esil was thrilled when she found Vulcan's horn in Suho's hand. Can you possess this for a second? Suho said with a bright smile. Hey! Esil, who was still fighting a breathless battle, had no time to argue with Suho's sudden idea. Is it possible? It's possible, but... Oh, I don't know. Spiritualization. Less talk, more work. At that moment, Esil's body gradually became transparent and turned into a spirit. Just like when Grey possessed Suho's body, Esil permeated into Vulcan's horn. Vulcan's horn devours the demon's soul. Esil's sharp voice echoed from within Vulcan's horn. Oh, okay, now what? Good. Can this sword grow like your spear? Of course. Oh, so that's it. It was such an urgent moment that an explanation was time-consuming. But Esil also realized something from Suho's words. It reminded her of the moment when Suho first grew in size and fought against sand centipedes. The time when he fought with his bare fists because he had no weapons. Are you doing it now? You'll need mana to do that. For a moment, Suho avoided the sand centipede's attacks just in time. As he ordered the black mummies to counterattack, he looked at Raken's sword in his other hand. Hey, did you see that? Can you do it too? Raken's sword made no reply. No? Aren't you part of the Fang clan like Demon's Horns? Suho remembered clearly. Raken was king of the beasts he met in the realm of rest. The sword was a fang that was pulled from the huge wolf's moth. It couldn't have been this small in the first place. It is possible, but I have no right. Right then, an answer came elsewhere. The king of beasts, Fang Monarch, nods his head willingly. This was because the owner of that fang was Raken. Great. After all permission was granted, Suho felt no need to delay any longer. Giant's armor. Use skill, Giant's armor. The armor wrapped around Suho's body and his size doubled. Now, the two swords held in both hands of Suho grew in size at the same time. Vulcan's horn and Raken's sword enlarged to a size that fits Suho's hand, growing twice as large. Suho crossed the twin swords and his eyes flashed. It will be different from before. Without hesitation, Suho rushed towards the sand centipede and swung his twin swords. The merciless slashing left numerous wounds on the sand centipede's body, but the monster was no joke either. Feeling threatened, the centipede swayed and tried to get out of the pyramid, shaking as if the pyramid would collapse. Suho decided to use all his mana in an instant. Grey, blessing. Grey's spiritual body, which had been staying in the shadow dungeon, permeated Suho's shadow. The spiritual body of Pet Gray is strengthened in the body of the Pontifex. Suho's hair was bleached silver, and wild energy scattered through his body. Use skill Grassland Wind. Movement speed temporarily increases by 30%. Attack speed temporarily increases by 30%. Suho's sword speed became incredibly fast, and he attacked the centipede even more mercilessly. A scream erupted from the sand centipede's mouth, and in the end, Suho's sword cut off his throat. You have killed a poisoned-tooth sand centipede. The gigantic monster finally collapsed. Suho's mana power ran out. Your level increased. Your level increased. Your level increased. Right then, his condition has returned to normal. Clear. Blessing is cancelled. Pet Gray's spiritual body leaves the body of the Pontifex. Skill Giant's armor is cancelled. Suho's appearance became smaller, and he returned to his original form. He looked at the corpse of the huge sand centipede that was hanging limp in front of him. Suho smirked and spoke without hesitation. Arise,